welcome to another episode of The Never-Ending Experiment. This is Kim Anderson. Today I want to talk a little bit more about plants. Plants are really kind of taking over my life. I think that's a good thing. I think that more people should plant more. Even if you're not taking care of plants yourself, I think the world needs a lot more plants. I personally think we need a lot more plants and a lot less people. And that's a good thing for people, actually, because the more plants we have, the more oxygen we have, the more food we have, the more aesthetic beauty we have around us. I think plants fill up a huge part of our life, and they are species that are even older than us. They've been around on this planet for a lot longer than us, and they sustain virtually every other life form. The sun goes through the plants and it gives energy to all of the web of life, including humans. Now, right now, I am starting a process called cold stratification, where you plant seeds in a cold environment. And I'm trying something new this year. I'm trying a process where we're going to put them in a bunch of pots, plastic pots, and then put those outside, mostly native plants, but there actually are quite a few other kind of plants that benefit from cold stratification. And the stratification just means that basically in nature, most plants will go through the winter and then come back to life in the spring. So when you cold stratify, you're just imitating that process and just using a whole bunch of recycled bottles. I think using recycling is probably the best way to go about planting, really trying not to use too much extra stuff when it comes to planting. I know a lot of people use a whole lot of artificial things when they get into it. And I know that I was talking before about maybe starting a company. I think it's sort of going to be on and off for a while. Uh, with farming, agriculture, any kind of plant company, it's going to be a process. A lot of plants, of course, can live for many years. I am hoping to just increase my collection. I think that's kind of how I see it now. I'm just collecting as many plants around me as I can and filling up the property that I have with as many plants as possible and really get that garden growing. And I'm also really trying to get into the medicinals. Like many people my age, like many women, are going through perimenopause, and that's been a really big struggle. I would not be surprised if there were some element of pollutants in the environment that are contributing to such a big rise in perimenopausal symptoms. So I'm hoping that getting more into herbal medicine will be more helpful. I know I have had help with that in the past, and for me, my sinuses have been a major issue, and for whatever reason, the perimenopausal influence has made that worse and it's made that more problematic. So it's been a real headache, and I mean like a literal headaches. So because of the different health issues that I've had, especially because a lot of them are chronic, I think herbal medicine can be one of the best things to try because most plants are co-evolved to exist with us. We are made to eat plants and animals. We're not made to consume novel drugs and salts and whatever else. I mean, some of those things can be healing, but I think that time has shown that the more inorganic the medicine we use, we tend to see a lot more side effects. And I think it just comes from evolution. We are organic organisms. We're made of DNA. We're made of the same stuff as other plants and animals. So it only makes sense that in order to heal our bodies, we would use the bodies of other organisms and the parallel organs that they have to help us, right? It just makes the most sense. So the company idea, I'm kind of sitting on it as far as landscaping design goes. We're going to see about that. I think that there are a few other companies that I was able to look up, which I found really interesting, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I really hope in the future I will be in a place where I can garden most of the year instead of here in Canada where it's really barely 6 months that we can really get in to really be growing plants. But hopefully, these stratified seeds will have some success. They're probably going to be going through some freezing weather soon, and that should help them to break out of the dormancy. I think that the cold stratification in the fridge just doesn't work for me at all. It's not the kind of thing I enjoy doing, and I have tried doing it before. I think I find maybe I'm a bit clumsy, but I find that it's so much easier to have the plants in the soil from the get go. I mean, everything that I've tried that is soil free gardening, I really haven't enjoyed. We tried a little bit of the hydroponics, we tried some of that rock wool that they put it in. I found it really annoying. I just am not a fan of that. Some people swear by it. If you want to get set up like that, I'm just really natural in the way that I do things. I want to be as close to the earth as possible. So all of these containers are getting ready are quite big, like 2 liter drink containers, 4 liter drink containers. So they've got a lot of room because what I've also learned with some of these native plants is actually because of the environment here in the cold grasslands, some of the plants actually grow a root network first before they even pop out of the ground. And if you have these tiny little plugs that you're putting plants in, they don't really get a good chance to be established, and so they never come up out of the ground. So I have this little plug full of roots, and there's no plant. So we'll see this year. I'm getting more into trying to figure this out. I know there's various groups that teach a little bit more about native planting, and I am hoping to get into that. I think right now I'm almost kind of still in overload with the plant world because there is just so much going on and there's so much to learn. I'm taking an ethnobotany course right now, looking at ethnomedicine, and I'm growing some medicinal plants already. I have one called wild carrot that is a biennial, so we'll see this next year. Some of them might come into fruition. Then we're going to go to seed, and the seeds are the medicinal part of the plant. Now, wild carrot has been very unusual to work with because I've already planted a number of them, and they have attributes of both normal carrots and wild carrots. And that's been really confusing. And if you look up the Latin names, I'm finding it getting even more confusing because wild carrots and regular carrots are both classified as the exact same species, Daucus carota. And that's super confusing because obviously there's so many different types of carrots and apparently 9 different subspecies of wild carrot. So we're looking at subspecies and possibly hybrids. I mean, these type of umbellifers are known for being easy to mix with other similar plants. So even if you have them in the same vicinity, they can also get pollinated by other similar plants. And they've done some studies on that with like domesticated carrots. And if they have wild carrots close by, some of them will mix in with their seeds, some of them, the domestic ones, will mix in with the wild carrot seeds. So it's going to be a massive learning curve. I've now got probably, I want to see at least like 80 plants, 60 plants. There's quite a few growing. So I'm going to have to start going through them and classifying them by their attributes because wild carrots are supposed to have hair all over them. And I have a number of them that grew that didn't have any hair on them. But we dug them up and they looked an awful lot like a wild carrot. Now, to make it even more complicated, of course, if you look this up, there are a number of similar species that are toxic that also look similar to the wild carrot. So it gets really complicated, but you just have to remember that every plant is an individual and it has their own genetics. No matter how much you learn about plants, there's going to be a new one that pops up, just like humans, that could be a mutant and could have some new attributes that maybe have never even been seen before. So that's what life is like, and that's what working with life is. It's not always expected. Every plant has their own individual nature, just like any other organism. So I'm getting very excited though about the whole plan. This is something that I've just had in my consciousness since I was very, very young. You know, growing up in the prairies, I learned to really appreciate the grasslands. Not everybody does appreciate the grasslands. I know people that look at a field of wild grasses and wildflowers and think, how can I develop this and make money off of it? I look at that same thing and I just wonder how many different species are there, what you can do with them. Like, I'm more curious about what's actually growing there. I'm a nature centric person. I wish there were more people like me so that we could conserve more of our natural environment. There's just far too many people ready to bulldoze everything over to make new housing and shopping complexes. I'm just, I think a little goes a long way with human beings. Like, I think that we've kind of overdone it. I'm confused why people think there's not enough of us. I'm confused why people think we should keep expanding, because nature is so important to us, and I think it takes having kind of fragile health to really be able to appreciate having natural environment, having plants, having organic food. This is something that I've just always hoped that the future would bring. And although there is definitely a lot of growth in the organic farming industry, unfortunately, there's just growth everywhere. So we're growing positive things and negative things. The growth in the GMO sector is just catastrophic. And, I mentioned this already. I think I posted about this, but basically, for the people out there, I hope some people who believe in GMOs are listening right now and just listen to what I'm saying. Like, there is no greater admission of guilt that GMOs are bad than the fact that they will not label them and that they don't want to label them. Of course, the rules now are that they do have to label them. They don't have to label what in a food is GMO. They could be 10 ingredients, and there'll just be a blurb on there that says this contains bioengineered products. And they really like to change the name a lot. And you got to remember, if people changing the name a lot about a subject, somebody's hiding something. That's always why they're changing the name, is because they don't want people to know something. And I'm not saying they are the same people. I'm not talking about one big conspiracy. These are common, ongoing, multiple different conspiracies coming up for different people. They look at the marketing, they look at the media, they look at what people are saying, and they think, how can we sneak this in so that people don't know? Let's change the name. So I'm using GMO, bioengineering, gene edited. There's a lot of different words for this kind of thing. And it's got to be the bane of my existence. Like, I'm just so shocked that I was flipping out about this in the 90s when I was a teenager, and it's still going. And it seems to be the same idiots that just, like, they so openly admit that it's bad. I've heard that Israel is spraying glyphosate on people. Like, uh, that's a pretty big sign that if you're using it in a wartime zone, to hurt people, that it's probably toxic. So even the people that are promoting it seem to know that it's bad. And of course, glyphosate is the pesticide that they use along with genetically modified organisms, and they modify the organisms to withstand herbicide. And can you imagine what that's going to do down the road? I mean, the fact that they are gene editing, and I'm just going to go into this a little bit, like, gene editing a plant is an attack. Okay. Epigenetics is a huge area of research. I've learned quite a bit about it, mostly because of my own disease. And what I can tell you is that it is so much more complicated than genetics. So, epigenetics, which is how genes create life, proteins, whatever, it's the how. The genetics are just the genes themselves. And even genes are only one part of DNA because there's a whole other part of DNA that isn't actually genes that forms part of the genome and the chromosomes that hold everything together. And we barely scratch the surface of what they do. So when you're gene editing, what you're doing is you're attacking the continuity and the self-contained functioning of the genes. Now, of course, genetics and epigenetics are so complicated that so many different things can go on. But what they do know is that in times of senescence, which is to say aging, and cancer, right, a disease, what happens to the epigenetics is it gets more chaotic. It gets more disorganized. More things are happening. Genes are switching on and off. It's harder to predict, but it's a less orderly. So it gets less and less orderly with time and with the progression of disease. And so if you gene edit, you're basically provoking chaos in the genome, which will lead to cancer and premature aging. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And this is a very similar parallel to artificial reproduction, where they wipe out the epigenetic reprogramming that happens in a new organism that's supposed to allow the new organism to basically restart on a clean slate. So you're passing on a dirty slate to an IVF child if you use that process, because it eliminates two very important processes of epigenetic reprogramming. And when it comes to gene editing, that's just a literal attack. IVF is also an attack on the genome. And this comes down to the fundamentals of what it is to be a DNA organism. We are all DNA organisms. We are all the same as those plants. And as human beings, we don't have the wisdom, the knowledge, or the understanding to put ourselves in the way to sort of change genes in a way that's actually positive, because the change itself is what is damaging. It's an insult to the organism to interfere in its genomes. Some people will say, well, viruses do that. Yeah, we're afraid of viruses. Viruses also attack us and cause problems. So why would we want to behave like a virus? That doesn't make any sense. So it's very negative. It's very frustrating. I'm just exasperated that these kind of things are still on the table, that we have to continuously fight GMOs. And the people in charge of that are so ignorant and so arrogant and so dangerous. It's just mind-blowing to me. So I feel like I've gotten nowhere arguing about this for decades. It's still happening. It's still in the food supply. Now they have a gene-edited pig. And I mean, the lives of these poor pigs normally is pretty short because they just grow them as fat as possible and then kill them. And now they're going to give them even more problems. Like, how many problems do they need? And we've already seen gene-edited salmon tank in Canada. Like, people don't want them. If you are someone who's promoting this, why do you want to force people to eat something that they don't want? Like, why are you doing that to people? Because if you don't want it labeled, that means you don't believe in it. Because if they did believe in it and they did think it was a good product, they would have labels all over it. Just like they put labels all over things now for random nutrients in the product. Like, some of the labels now are so confusing. And it is exasperating, to try to eat healthy in this world when so many people are trying to destroy health and the environment just to make a quick profit is just so sad. Like, why are you ruining everyone's lives? And why do you think that you know better? But the fact is, what it comes down to is quality. Quality of food, quality of life. When we live in a natural environment, we have better quality food. It can be harder to come by. I mean, it really depends on a lot of different factors of what your life is like. But I'm just really sick of the disdain and the disrespect for nature, for people who don't seem to understand that everything in our economy still comes from nature. No matter how much it's been modified, no matter how much it's changed, it is from nature. Like, that's what we are. I'm just so exasperated by the ignorance around it. And, the idea that you're going to make a profit off of this, it's not worth it. It's really, really not worth it. You can see by the amount of effort that they put into marketing. And if they put that much effort into marketing, it means it's not going to sell itself. So they know that it's flawed to start with. So I try as much as I can to get open pollinated, non GMO, like this one. This is from Eco Seed Bank in Montreal. I've got native plants from ALCLA, which is here in Alberta. We've got strictly medicinal seeds. Look at these. These are all the way from Oregon. Angelica Shining. So I am just collecting all these different seeds. I've got about, I want to say 80 seed packages right now. And I'm going to try to also do more of the food plants. Look at this one. Northern Seeds. We've got some parsley. I'm really hoping to go big this year on the plants and just get as many of them out there as I can. I had one year where I really went for it, and it really, really blew me away, like how much work and how much energy it takes to get so many plants growing. And, you kind of got to watch them all the time. They're such a paradox of low maintenance and high maintenance. Look at this one. This is Heritage Harvest, another kind of parsley, this giant parsley, Giganti di Napoli. These ones, oh my gosh, this Giganti parsley is amazing. It really is really, really huge and really healthy. And so that's been very interesting to learn what seeds are actually going to work. Some of them are like, oh, it's an interesting plant, but it's not that tasty. So it's just a massive learning curve. And I'm hoping to be able to grow as much food as I possibly can this year. Last summer was all about reorganizing the landscaping, and this year is going to be about just getting as many food plants in the ground as possible. Living in a northern environment, most of the berries we have are quite small, although the raspberry bushes are pretty big, so we've got quite a few raspberries. And I'm going to try and get as many herbs growing as much as possible. I'm really curious to find out more about the kind of herbs that we have growing here for culinary purposes. I think that's been kind of a gap with Indigenous cooking because we don't know as much about the culinary herbs that were used here in Canada. I know there has been a really great product called Mitso, and they make pemmican, which is a very traditional food from the prairies. And I read about this when I was a teenager about pemmican and how important it was. It's dried buffalo meat and berries mixed together with fat, and it is shelf stable and it can last apparently for years, at least months to years. And so people took this with them and they also traded that with the new settlers and voyagers and fur traders who came to the prairies early on, the early Europeans. And so everyone ate pemmican for a long time, and this was a staple food of the diet of the people in this region. And then it just completely disappeared. I mean, they started slaughtering the buffalo. They were intending to wipe them out. And luckily they didn't. Luckily they survived and they've been making a big comeback. And I mean, I grew up seeing a buffalo all the time when I went driving to see my grandmother through Elk Island National Park. And they had big herds there, but they were one of the few places where you could see them. And now they're really growing and taking over a lot more places. And the meat, just purely from a culinary perspective, is delicious. I mean, it is really, really good. It is tastier than beef. It's very similar to beef. And the pemmican I tried was really awesome. It kind of tastes like a combination of beef jerky and a fruit roll up because it's got the berries in it. And it's a really great thing that this kind of food is coming back. And I think it's kind of interesting to see the resurgence in Indigenous food because sometimes it's just that it's food that we already eat that we don't even know is Indigenous. You know, and I feel a similar way sometimes when I'm looking at English or French food, and it's like you can't see it when it's everywhere because it's so ubiquitous that you're not even sure like what or where this type of food came from. Bannock is actually a Scottish word. That's something that they also made in Scotland. So sometimes what people are eating today isn't exactly what their traditional food was. And it's pretty interesting to dig into that history to see what kind of food people were eating and especially those really healthy foods, you know, that use good whole organic food. And I'm just really, really going to do my best to try and bring as much of that back as possible. I've got a lot of other non Indigenous food plants, of course, but I'm just so curious to try more of those herbs because sometimes I think with Native culture they use a lot of teas, but sometimes those herbs can actually be used in a meal too. Why not? So hopefully we'll see what we can try more things. I know last year I tried chickweed for the first time and it tasted like grass. Tasted exactly like grass. So you never know. Like I think it's worth trying as many things as possible. I'm always a little nervous to try something for the first time. I prefer to share it with someone just in case something goes wrong. We know what we're going to do about it, but so far it's been really safe. So learning to identify plants has got to be one of the most important things, but it's a type of knowledge that's just so crucial. I mean, in these times, we just have no idea where the future is headed. So don't scoff at herbalism or eating native food, like or eating wild or foraging, because you never know. That may come back to us. We may need to rely on that because our economic system and our food systems are just so fragile and changeable. You can see it by how many different companies and corporations come and go. New foods show up one week and then it's gone, and then another week there's some new company. It's just very unpredictable. So I say do your best to grow your own food if you have any possible way of doing that. And hopefully I can get more into that. You know, I've learned a lot about growing food just from doing it on my own for so long and trying in every place that I've lived in. Even with a tiny little balcony, I try to fill as many pots as I can. And, you know, I've left quite a few sunflowers and sage and amaranth behind, some of my favorite plants to grow, and just get as many of them as I can growing in the ground. So I hope everybody else listening can get some opportunity to engage with plants, even if you're not growing your own, at least if you can get to a park and just get some oxygen. You know, sometimes I really worry about our mental health is really being affected by our physical health, and the more pollutants we have around us, the more challenging that is. So we need plants, we need oxygen, we need food, so get into the plant world. And that's it for this week. I'm going to be back in a couple weeks. Thanks for joining me. This is Kim Anderson, The Never Ending Experiment.